Ladies and gentlemen, death is inevitable. Death is tragic and full of sorrow. Oftentimes it leads people to do things and act out in ways that they normally wouldn't do. And that's what you've been shown here today. The plaintiff, Mr. Fitzgerald, is angry. He's confused. He's grief-stricken. And he'd like someone to displace all of these emotions on. And the entity and the people that he's chosen to do that with are my client and its staff members and its administrator, Yerba Buena. He would like for them to be responsible for the death of his mother. But just as his emotional feelings are displaced, so is this case. The civil case brought before you concerns negligence, and to find a claim of negligence, you need to meet a certain burden of proof. And that burden of proof would require you showing that an act or omission by Yerba Buena directly caused the death of Mrs. Fitzgerald. And as you've just heard through the testimony of Mr. Davis, himself and the staff members were well aware of Mrs. Fitzgerald's condition. They knew of her bed sore. They were properly trained. They kept many training sheets. They had many in-house speakers come and teach the staff members how they should appropriately address a bed sore situation. They turned Mrs. Fitzgerald when she needed turning. Often was the case, she didn't need turning. Mrs. Fitzgerald was talkative. She was mobile. She'd often scoot around on her wheelchair. If she needed a problem or needed assistance because a problem that arose, Yerba Buena was there. From 1999 to 2004, Mrs. Fitzgerald had no problems. The plaintiff would like to point out the fact that social services paid a visit to Yerba Buena, which is true, but it was 12 months prior to Mrs. Fitzgerald and the condition she had with her ulcer. And they just came right before that and said that there were no further issues. They had one issue with the first aid, with some first aid training. But that was it, completely unrelated to Mrs. Fitzgerald and her condition. Also, you've just previously heard from Dr. Amporo, and he states he's looked at all the records, he's looked at all the evidence from both St. Teresa's Hospital and from the personnel records of Yerba Buena. A nurse saw Mrs. Fitzgerald regularly. Everyone was apprised of the situation. And the nurse's notes, which is the only thing that we've had to go on, which you've just heard, they say her ulcer was in the stages of 1 and 2. It doesn't say 3. The only place it says 3 is at St. Teresa's Hospital records. When she first showed up, and it wasn't too late, and her condition was mild, and her outlook was promising. But they neglected her, and they mistreated her. They didn't give her situation the proper attention that it deserved. They allowed her to become dehydrated. She got a urinary tract infection. Her discharge papers say she was stage 4, the worst possible stage. After she'd been at St. Teresa's Hospital for 2 months, they allowed her to become in this position just before she had been put on hospice because of the infection. Her death certificate reads that she died from a respiratory infection, which is why she was put on hospice. It was because of the infection. It wasn't because of the ulcer. Mr. Davis and the staff and the nurse and everyone at Yerba Buena did everything right. As you just heard from the testimony of Dr. Amporo, Title 22 regulations allow a stage 1 and 2 ulcer to take place and for the patient to still remain in in-house care at a facility. Nothing was done improperly. Nothing was done illegally. In fact, they took great care of Mrs. Fitzgerald. The truth is, she was 76 years old, and 76-year-old people don't heal well. Sometimes they don't bounce back, as many of us know. And it's a very sad situation, but it's a sad situation that happens to us all, and it's not fair to put the blame on people that are undeserving. The blame should fall on St. Teresa's Hospital, not my client, Yerba Buena. Yerba Buena is a residential care facility. It's not a medical care facility. Thank you.